AI Challenges and Solutions. The title of our breakout session today is Human AI Teaming in Action. What does human AI teaming look like in aviation? Before we jump into investigating this fascinating question, let me first introduce our panelists today. First, we have Andrew Kilner from EASA. Andrew has been supporting the EASA AI program for AI in developing human factors guidance for AI and CESAR research projects. He works in the certification directorate in the field of human factors, supporting business jets, rotary wing, and eVTOL projects. Andrew came to EASA with 30 years of experience of applying human factors to safety-critical and high-risk projects in civil nuclear, conventional defense, air traffic control, and nuclear defense projects. Andrew currently works with René Perken-Medved and Mathilde Labatut for developing the Level 3 human factors guidance for AI. Welcome, Andrew. We are happy to have you on board. We have Miguel Villegas Sanchez from Skyway. Miguel has been leading Use Case 4 in HaiQ project since the very beginning, focusing on how an intelligent assistant can support air traffic controllers in managing arrivals and departures at single runway airports. He has an extensive experience at Skyway, formerly known as Ferronats, a Spanish air navigation service provider, where he has worked as tower air traffic controller at airports such as Vigo, Jerez, and Alicante, as well as he is a head of ATC of most of them. Additionally, he has served as a head of training and competence within the company. He currently holds the position of head of Airport Management Service at Adolfo Suárez Madrid Barajas Airport. Welcome, Miguel. We have Jaime Diaz-Pineda from Thales. Jaime is the engineering lead of Human Autonomy Teaming System in Thales Avionics. In 2021, he won the European Defence Agency Innovation Prize for the most innovative ideas and technologies enabling human-machine teaming for defense. His main activity involves developing decision support systems for pilots, applicable to both civil and military domains. In the HaiQ project, he is leading use case number 2 to develop a concept of assistant in cockpit operations. You're going to hear use case 2 and use case 4 in details during the presentations. Finally, my name is Veronika Takács. I'm from DBLU, and I'm a human factors expert. My background is in psychology. I hold a PhD in applied work in organizational psychology, and my expertise is centered around teamwork. Specifically, lately I've been working on the concept of human AI teaming from the human point of view, specifically focusing on team adaptation and team cognition from human AI teaming point of view. Right now, in HaiQ project, I'm concentrating on the design and assessment of new human skills and competences, and this is what brought me here today. We are going to have the presentations first with Andrew being the first one presenting the EASA concept paper for AI. The second panelist will be me introducing the HaiQ project in a nutshell. And then Miguel and Jaime will introduce use case 4 and use case 2. After that, we are going to have a Q&A session and discussion where we encourage you to engage in a conversation with us, reflect on the presentations, and also to ask your questions, really, if you have any. Now I'm asking Andrew to start the presentation.
So good afternoon, and thank you for coming. I wasn't sure when you start talking about regulation quite how boring you can make it, but let's see how we get on. So, in fact, it's not about the whole of the EASA AI concept paper. I'm going to focus on a tiny little bit about it, which is describing the different levels of AI. It's something that when we engage with a project, it's the first question that are asked, and it's kind of the time and place that we spend a lot of energy explaining to projects where they think they are, listening to them and discussing with them about where they actually are. Everybody wants to be 3A until they work out that that's more regulation than they can shake a stick at. So we try to encourage people to come to a lower level. So the first slide is just to kind of position the work that we do within the scope of kind of the broader European regulation and also the specific EASA concept paper. So we know that there's safety and security assessments, there's requirements for those. And we've talked already, or we've heard already this morning about the EU AI Act as well. And both of these documents are kind of placeholders for ethical work, for AI within the human-centered versions of AI projects. And he asked to summarize that within what you call the trustworthy analysis section of the guidance. And if you drill down into the trustworthiness part of the AI guidance, you'll find in there section 3. Section 3 talks very much about human-centered issues, and it's where we start to discuss the breakdown of the different levels and the different sub-levels for AI. Now, that's as boring as I want to get, kind of positioning regulation within a frame of a bigger regulation. It's not particularly exciting. So when you look at the document, it describes 3 basic levels. Those 3 basic levels are largely dealing with an assisting function, which is what we see at level 1A and 1B. We talk about kind of the teaming concept is introduced at level 2, 2A and 2B. And then we kind of talk about advanced automation functions at level 3A. And someone will say, well, advanced automation doesn't infer AI. And I'll say, you're quite right, it doesn't. But really, in discussing with SJU, we aligned on this phrase, advanced automation, because in order to achieve the advanced automation that kind of everybody's been dreaming of, realistically, we'll need to embrace some form of AI to deliver it in a sensible way. So I can show that table in a very slightly different way. When we look at level 1A, what we're talking about is things that you've got in your mobile phone. When you take a picture and it draws a box around a face or it offers you an AI filter, this isn't changing how you take a photograph. This is kind of adding to you, or it's offering you an additional piece of technology or information. It's enhancing the capture of data at the point that you're generating it. So there's no massive end user impact there other than to provide you with a further set of options. When we go into kind of 1B, 1B is starting to provide you with a set of options that you can choose from. So again, there's no kind of automated decision making, there's no kind of further taking of actions. It's just providing you with a series of solutions. The solutions are being derived from AI. So we can look at things like diversionary airports. There's always a series to choose from. Which is the best one? Which is the best one based on the scenario that you've got unfolding at the time? And is that to do with a medical emergency? Is that to do with depressurizations and so on? When we move into kind of 2A, it's at this point that we start to talk about decision support. And we talk about automatic decision support and implementation. So the implementation side is now the first point that we get to when we start to recognize something genuine about AI that everybody's talking about and we want to see really happen. So this is also picking up on something we call collaboration, that we work together, but not necessarily, cooperation, not collaboration. And then as we get into 2B, we then start to talk about collaboration. So cooperation, collaborate. I cooperate with a policeman when he tells me to kneel down on the floor because he's pointing a taser at me. I don't collaborate with a policeman when he's pointing a taser at me saying get down on the floor. So this is the kind of difference between collaboration and cooperation. That's not mine. The thing that we want to pick up kind of on this slide is this idea of what we're then seeing kind of the authority of the person, the authority of the machine. So we have directed decision support, supervised decision support, safeguarded and non-supervised. So when we're looking at these different levels, you can see that we're bringing them in from kind of level 2A onwards. And this is kind of the language that we're looking for when projects are coming to talk to us. So are you talking about directed decision support, which is how the AI will then be managed by the end user? You'll direct it to do something. Is it supervised, which is largely it will do its own thing, but you have the opportunity to intervene. Safeguarded at level 3A is where the machine is largely doing what it wants within the scheme that you've defined for it, but you still have the opportunity to intervene and prevent it doing it. But it's intervention-based. It's not kind of collaboration and cooperation anymore. It's an intervention. And finally, kind of non-supervised. This is the very end of the place where we don't envisage an operator. So at this point, my 30 years of human factors experience is in the toilet, and we're kind of hoping that we don't get past 2B, 3A, because this is where the real meat is and the real interest is in terms of delivering things into the aviation environment. What we often find when we start discussing with people is people are saying, well, we're 1B or we're 2B, or we're 2A or we're 1B. And what I wanted to share with you is kind of the points at which we define 1A and 1B, and then how we migrate from 1B to 2A. So what's the kind of language that we're looking for? What's the kind of things that we're expecting to see? And we said at the beginning that the 1A is kind of, it's enhancing the information that you'd captured using or through your sensors. And that's pretty straightforward. We know what that is. And then 1B is what I think we've heard a lot of descriptions in the projects over the last couple of days, is we're now using the technology to provide the end user with a set of options. This is why we do it. It provides it faster, it's able to process more variables, and it does it in a way that hopefully then provides a solution to the end user that is more easily derived and acted upon more quickly. But to kind of migrate from 1B to 2, this is where we introduce this notion of cooperation. So what we want then is, when we move to 2A, is the system is taking responsibility within a defined framework for actually taking actions and performing tasks. So we still have the opportunity for the system to be blocked or to intervene, but largely the system is going to do what we tell it to, but it'll do it by itself. When we move into 2A and 2B, this is where I said before, we have cooperation. You're working with something, but you're under the direction or the division of a specific end user. When we move to 2B, what we're looking for is this notion of shared collaboration. So it's not just the pilot being directive, it's not just the air traffic controller being directive, is what you've got is a cooperation and a collaboration of working together towards a shared goal. And that shared goal is again, it's a difficult one to kind of put down into maths and equations and all the rest of it, because it requires some degree of shared situation awareness or some degree of situation representation within the equipment or within the software hardware itself. So when we get into 2B, what we're looking for is almost an autonomous system, but which is incorporating and helping the end user to do what they want to do, to achieve it, but to work together. And then as we move into 3A, is almost kind of the operator then takes a step back. So what we're looking for in 3A is then this notion of kind of non-active monitoring, so passive monitoring, and you'd expect an end user only to intervene in this series if it's alerted. So if there's some warning that the operator needs to step in, then he can veto the actions that you're expecting to see from a system. So I think we've just talked about that. Oh, it's a bit slow. So moving on, if we kind of wrap this up as a larger view, is to take a slightly different part of it. That's how we migrate between the different levels. When you look at them from a global level, is the majority of projects that we're hoping to see in this next tranche are pitching to be 2A or 2B. And typically that's where the exciting stuff is. That's where we start to see AI living this life that we want it to do within the scope of kind of advancing aviation. What we have within 2A is this idea of a predefined task allocation pattern. And I'll talk about this again in a little while. But this is this concept of cooperation, where we have a directive approach that the pilot is largely setting the framework, or the air traffic controller is setting the framework of what it wants the AI to achieve. And the AI will do it. Or it will do it and it will suggest to the AI, it will suggest to the pilot that there's a better way of achieving this. But what we have is the pilot, air traffic controller, engineer is in full control, has total authority. We're working towards an end user goal. When we get into level 2B, it's a little bit more dynamic. So this is where we start to talk about collaboration, and it's where we talk about a dynamic task allocation pattern. Now, dynamic, I'll explain in a moment or two. But again, if you're going to get to a point where you're having a shared situational awareness, situational representation, how are you achieving that? How are you developing it? And the thing that kind of, as we were doing our work, was it's quite clear that this is going to revolve a lot around communication and language. So within the scope of 2B, is what we need to see is how and in what way the system is developing this sense of situational representation, and how you're incorporating or including this need to communicate bidirectionally. So any system will need to probably communicate between the ground and the air, and between the different parties that are actually responsible for using it. So whether that's a pilot or a traffic controller, that communication has to happen. We know in the aviation world that that environment is already heavily charged. So how are you going to use communication, verbal, non-verbal, procedural, and so on, to bring this to fruition, to make it real? And again, the point to take away from this is what we're expecting is that the operator, the pilot, the controller, and the system work together to achieve a shared goal. What's a shared goal? It could be landing the aircraft. If you're landing the aircraft, you have to manage your comms, you have to manage the aircraft, and whilst you're doing that, you have to then prepare for what is going to happen after the aircraft is actually on the ground. Now, if you watch pilots work together, it's beautiful, it's coordinated, and they have a set of ways of working that make this very, very slick. If you then introduce a third agent into that, how are we going to get the agent to that point that it can add to the process, so it can add value to the process without kind of deviating fully and further away from what we want to do? So I said about the allocation patterns and schemes. This is something that was kind of a way of bounding what we expect AI to be able to do and to deliver. And we have a pattern, which is a specific set of tasks that you could allocate to a system, and a scheme which kind of looks at a broader element of how you organize the patterns. So I mentioned landing 2 seconds ago. When you land an aircraft, you have to manage the thrusts, you have to manage the flaps, you have to manage the attitude, you have to manage your speed. Some of those tasks could be given to an AI. So managing the flaps, for example, is one that it's flaps 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. That's how you take off and land. So if you give the flaps to an aircraft, the allocation pattern might be to manage the flaps during landing. But you also might want to manage the flaps during takeoff. So are they two different schemes? Is managing the flaps a scheme that exists within a pattern, and you have two patterns that then one is takeoff and one is landing? So this is kind of another way that what we're looking to do is to understand within a project how you are defining, describing what the AI does within the broader functions that are allocated between the controllers, between the pilots and the AI, but also as well how we're expecting you to describe them in a dynamic way such that it's clear to the end user what his mental model should be of how that system is going to work. So what are the parameters, what are the scope of influence that you're expecting the system to have, and how it should deliver it. Okay. So I'm coming to the end of my 9 minutes, I think. It's been rather rapid to try and get this concept over. But again, the point of this is to share the language with you. The majority of people are working on projects that at some point will have a regulatory view placed upon them. What I just want to do is to kind of share with you from an end user perspective the kind of language we expect to see reflected in those projects. The Jarvis project, it was very nice this morning to listen to what Dimitri was saying. We've worked closely with them. And it's true, if you take regulation, as painful and boring as it is, by the hand at the beginning of the project, it significantly reduces the pain as you get towards the end of the project. So these are the documents that exist. I encourage you to read them. They're not horrible documents and they're not hard to read. If you're going to focus on anything, have a look at the level 2 guidance. If you want some ideas about how projects have been engaging with and trying to engage with the regulation and whether it's worked or not, then the MLEAP stuff is very good. And as you may know, some of you will be involved in the rulemaking task to actually turn this from guidance into regulation. That's still a little while away, but it's coming, so it's there. Okay? Thank you very much. I shall hand over to Miguel.
Before Miguel introducing use case 4, I will very quickly introduce you the most important objectives of Haiku project, because both of the use cases are from that project and very closely linked to the approach that we are taking. Could you please support me in putting on the presentation under my name, Veronica? Thank you. So, as I said, a couple of words about Haiku project. The expression Haiku stands for Human AI teaming knowledge and understanding for aviation safety. This is a project that is funded by Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Program, and this is a 3-year project that has started in 2022, so we are reaching the end of, in August. The goal of the project is to develop human-centered AI-based intelligent assistance for safe, secure, trustworthy, and effective human-AI partnership in aviation systems. What makes this unique is the human-centric approach that we are taking in developing intelligent assistants that integrate human values, needs, abilities, and limitations. By human-centered approach, we mean that we start the whole research from the user's needs and pain points and goals, and all of our 6 use cases are very much based on fulfilling these needs and goals by applying AI-based intelligent assistance, but also they address the criteria of desirability and social acceptance. One thing that is very important and transversal throughout the project is the analysis of how technology changes human activity. And in our approach, doing the same job with a digital assistant is not doing the same job anymore. Therefore, we are very actively focusing on how these human competencies may change in the future as a result of the introduction of AI in operation in the cockpit or air traffic controllers or all the other end users I will tell you later about. We bring a variety of expertise together as we are 15 partners from 10 different countries, and most importantly we have 3 communities working together: human factors experts, end users, as well as technology suppliers. And these are the 6 use cases that we call the Haiku Swift knife. What's important to communicate here is that we are not only focusing on pilots and air traffic controllers, but we extend our focus to urban air mobility, safety managers, and also passengers. These are the 3 strands of works, like the outputs that we are developing in the project, which are the intelligent assistants related to the use cases that Miguel and Jaime will present you. And also, as I said, very importantly, we are working on the explainability framework, a human factors assurance process. We are also focusing a lot on the analysis of liability and ethics related to these use cases, and as well the design and assessment of new human roles I already mentioned. Thank you for your attention, and now I ask Miguel to present use case 4 related to air traffic controllers. Could you please change the presentation to Miguel Villegas?
Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to just try to give you a glimpse of my use case 4, which is, as Veronica said, related to how an intelligent assistant can help air traffic controllers sequencing arrivals and departures at single runway airports. So instead of me explaining it to you, there is a quick video that is going to be really helpful in that matter. If you please. There should be a video here. Let me see. It should be embedded. It's in the same presentation, like second slide. Yes, second slide. Doesn't matter. I'll just try to explain it then. So basically the concept is we developed an intelligent assistant that is designed to help air traffic controllers in Alicante. We chose Alicante as the scenario with the purpose of supporting them in their decision making. Basically, on a daily basis, you can have a peak hour, 30-something, 40-something traffic per hour, and you get normally to focus on like the next one to use the runway, tunnel vision. Sometimes we think an assistant can help you with dealing with that by keeping in mind the bigger picture and helping you sequence all those arrivals and departures, taking into account everything that is going on. So as a quick image of the architecture that is behind, you can see there are 4 input layers. The first input layer is based on 2 main components, which is the air traffic controllers as such, and real-time data. Air traffic controllers will interact through the HMI and will talk to pseudo-pilots. Pseudo-pilots will follow ATCOS instructions, and all this information is processed and sent to the technical layer. We're talking about ATC instructions, clearances. We're talking about all the data regarding the aircraft around, speed, velocity, EOBTs, flight plans, etc. All this information is sent to a technical layer, is processed, and then is fed into the ETA calculator module. This one is using machine learning to predict the estimated time of arrival for every single aircraft coming to the airport. This is critical to get a real forecast of what's going on and who's going to use the runway next. Then this module is going to provide all the necessary information to the next one. We call it sequence calculation module. This one is the one that is going to take the estimated time of arrivals plus all the other information regarding departures, including EOBTs, CTOTs, stands, runway use, everything that needs to be taken into account for a final sequence that is going to be shown to the air traffic controller in the HMI. And at the same time, this module is also the one that is going to provide with the necessary information to generate an explanation to the air traffic controller. As Veronica said at the very beginning, we need the system to be trustworthy. If you want it to be trustworthy, you need to explain why this sequence is like I'm showing to you, so it can match the ATCOS mind after all. ATCOS will receive all that information in the HMI and will interact with it. Regarding the HMI, I'm just gonna say a couple of things. The HMI is critical and is intended for seamless integration into Alicante's existing system. So it basically delivers real-time sequence to controllers and also offers for different levels of explanations on demand. I'm gonna just show you a couple of examples of the HMI that were used during validation 2, which was the last one a couple of months ago, well, less than a month ago, which is, this is basically a replica of very similar HMI, that's very similar to the one that Alicante air traffic controllers are currently using, with the flight strips, digital electronic flight strips, and all the information regarding arrivals and departures, without ESA. ESA provides an additional layer of information, as you can see in the image. On the left side, then you can see 3 arrivals with the sequence number on the 1, 2, 3. We are only showing 3. That was part of the validation process because ATCOS really don't want to know who's going to be the number 7. They only want to be focused on the next 3 aircraft to use the runway. So basically, what we have here is basically the 3 next aircraft to use the runway, plus several, let's say, additional safety warnings and safety nets that we designed from the very beginning. This example is a blinking sequence. This blinking sequence is warning the air traffic controller that the current sequence is about to expire. So if we go a little bit deeper into it, you can see DHL, number 1, as a departure, taxiing to the holding point. Number 2, Air Europa, arriving to the airport. That sequence obviously is valid for a period of time. Once the arrival gets closer and closer and the departure has not taken off already, the sequence at a certain point will be invalid because it's going to be potentially unsafe. ESA is showing by blinking the sequence that there is a potentially unsafe situation here. So this sequence is valid, but it's running out of time. So you better do something about it. At the same time, when there is a sequence change, you will see the number with an arrow up or down, whether the sequence has moved up or down, and a very short explanation, just only if you mouse over the number. So right here, you'll see that the expected time to use the runway, so the expected time of arrival for that aircraft has improved in 1 minute, 12:09, which means 1 minute before the expected time to use the runway for the departure. So there is a potential improvement on the sequence. ESA is changing the sequence, and if you want to know why, you just need to mouse over it and get this brief explanation. What we currently have, as I said before, the ETA calculator module is currently using machine learning. We provided hundreds of exercises in the simulator, so it's trained on the trajectories, different aircraft, performances, speeds. So this is critical because it significantly increases the accuracy, and at the end, it doesn't make much sense to have an assistant if it's not accurate enough to provide you with whatever is going on. Also, ESA is particularly beneficial in complex situations with multiple tasks and adjusted to changes based on training data, which reduces at the end cognitive load on air traffic controllers during peak times. We've noticed that if there is not a peak time, it's not as useful as, obviously, when you're so focused on so many things that you really need to get some help. Also, the techniques for explainability enhance understanding of ESA's rationale, after all. And as I said before, if you want to build trust on a system, you need to align with ATCO's mental framework. Those explanations are meant for that. There are actually 4 levels of explanation, CLT levels. And this is what we have now. This is what we've been testing so far. But we believe there is so much more to do right here with ESA. I'm talking about tailoring AI models for individual air traffic controllers. One of the things we noticed when we designed this at the very beginning is that we thought ESA could improve ATCO's performance, but that's not true because every ATCO is completely different. So there are more aggressive ones, there are more conservative ones. What we realized is if you really want to do that, you really need to tailor the assistant to every single one of them. There's a lot of diverse data that can be incorporated to increase ESA's performance. Ground movement operations can be also integrated for better route guidance and conflict detection. That could be one of the biggest things in the future, if you can have an assistant helping you out with taxi routes and potential conflicts on the ground. Because right now ESA is helping a local controller, but yeah, it can be extended to help a ground controller as well. Also, it can be very useful during poor weather conditions, by anticipating low visibility conditions as well, by helping you change the runway when there's a sudden runway change on the wind direction. And also it could be directed to allowing the system to focus on different objectives. Let's say the airport at a certain point needs to prioritize departures over arrivals because there's going to be an airport congestion. ESA can do that as well. Obviously, assisting during emergency situations, that would be very helpful as well. And why not enhancing workforce efficiency by automating the clearance positioning towers, something we mentioned in this same forum last year. And at the end, if it works, why not extending it to airports with multiple runways? That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will present the results of use case 2 related to the cockpit operations. Why an assistance? In fact, the environment is very complex today. The weather is changing, the traffic is increasing, and to solve that, we are pushing intelligent assistance, intelligent function, complex functions, the name that you want, in the cockpit to facilitate the life of the pilot. But however, these intelligent functions that we put in the cockpit are complex. So it will provide more complex situations, and we expect from the pilot that they can be maybe AI expert to understand how the system works, understand what is happening. If some case we put more complexity with the failure, with something risk situations, there will be a misconnection between the pilot and the intelligent functions to understand what is happening, and maybe we need a new way to interact, a new user interface to understand what is happening. Let's imagine that we have to work together and we are not able to communicate. So you can imagine the complexity of that. I am not able to explain what are my objectives. You are not able to explain me what you are doing. So let's make the same analogy with the human-machine collaborations. And to solve that, we have implemented a new concept of communication between the human and intelligent functions, and based it in two principles. The first one is that the human can talk in human language. We don't want that the human can be an expert on the intelligent functions. And the system is able to say what he's doing, so he's able to explain his process. We make an analogy for that. We want that the pilot could be the director of the orchestra. He doesn't know how the instrument works alone, but he's able to provide the instructions to a set of instruments to produce music. So that's the concept that we have developed in Thales, that we call combi, by bidirectional communicator. So what is combi? Combi is two translators. It's not the intelligent function that we put in the functional side. So we have the human in the top of the image, and in the bottom of the image we have the machine, the intelligent function. So we put two translators, a first translator able to understand the human language, and he will translate, as his name says, the operational intentions towards technical parameters of the functions. So the function will be set up automatically, and the function will provide a solution that we can evaluate with key performance indicators. We can measure the result. If, for example, if we are talking about the trajectory, we can measure the distance of the trajectory, the fuel consumption, a lot of parameters that we put in a new translator to upgrade the abstraction level, how we show the result to the pilot. So the pilots have requested something using natural language. The result will be presented also using natural language. We have limited the number of elements for the natural language. We make a big list. Oh, sorry. So we make a list of this element. We'll present some results. So in terms of use case 2 and result specific of that, we work with the team that you can see in my slide. Mainly the work with Embraer and some laboratories specialized in human factors. We have 3 main results in the use case 2. The first one is give me assistance only when I need. We are trying to imagine intelligent assistance for a lot of situations, and sometimes the pilots say, in fact, I can't do that. Changing the radio frequency automatically, pilot says, I don't need assistance for that. Please give me assistance for more critical situations. So we have identified one example where the pilots say, yes, in this case, the complexity level can justify the need of assistance. So I can develop that later. The second result is to be able to identify what are the good elements, the good vocabulary that the pilot can use to explain to the system what he needs. So we have identified a lot of elements, 6, but the pilot say, I can deal only with 3. So please provide me the most important element. And finally, we in the use case, we make the question: what is the good system architecture where we can put the human autonomy teaming solutions to ensure performance and safety in the operation? So, in terms of architecture, what we do is we have selected a use case. As I said, my use case is the use case for a diversion. We are from a flight from Marseille to Munich, and in the middle of the trajectory, the initial destination is close. We have selected this scenario because we didn't want a very strange scenario. We wanted something that is usual, is normal for everyday operations. So it is not a critical situation, but it's a complex situation. So the initial destination is closed. The pilot has to deal with 200 passengers on board because the new diversion means find for hotels in the destination and rerouting for the initial destination. So it's something that the pilots say, yes, that is very complex, and some pilots don't have a good air operational control center, so they have to deal that alone in the cockpit, maybe with the support or with the ATC, but it's not always the solution. So they agree that this is a good use case for demonstrate the interest of assistance. So we put the 2 translators, as I said. We have used a technology for this translator of genetic Fuzzy tree. Is a fuzzy logic algorithm, proprietary of Thales, where we have integrated the expert knowledge to train the translators using supervised learning. So we use the knowledge of several pilots to train the translators, and the translators are able to understand what operational intention means in terms of technical parameters and how to evaluate a solution to translate that to operational intentions. So in fact, the operational intention, I think that I put an example, but the final one that we use is the demonstrator that I done during the breakouts. And the three operational intentions that we are using today for the regional segment, because the operational intentions are different for every segment, are pilot cognitive comfort, passenger comfort, and airline profitability. So the system will maximize these three parameters. It's not the pilot saying, give me 100% of some intentions. The pilot will prioritize only what is the order of his priority for these three operational intentions, and the system is not able to maximize the three solutions, the three operational intentions, he will prioritize what the pilot requested. And finally, to show the interest and to think about the certification activities that we are planning for the next years, we have introduced this human autonomy teaming architecture inside our tools. We have integrated that to our flight management system. We understood that the integration of this flight management system is a good way to increase the integrity level of the result. And now we have implemented that in our avionics suite to be able to provide to the pilot a good environment to evaluate these solutions and in the near future be able to make real flights with these solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the panelists to present their work. And now I encourage the audience to reflect on this and to ask your questions if you have any to any of the panelists, of course.
Hello. I have a question about, I think, what you were saying, and I think I saw also the Mahalo project results about we need to adapt it to the operator. What are your thoughts about verification? Because I think when you develop a system, we go through the verification and the certification process, how that will change if you are actually changing the AI for a specific operator.
Sorry. Who is the question for? For me. Okay.
Sorry, because I thought it was for Andy. Could you say it again, please? In my mind, certification is for Andy.
You need the red line, and then it's all good. The button on the right.
Okay, I think I'm loud enough. So what I was saying is you say that one of the findings was it's better if you actually adapt the model for a specific operator. So therefore, I think my question is what are your thoughts about verification and development? Because at the beginning, you develop, and the idea is you verify, certify, and after that you say, okay, is this done? So where do you think we need to do the verification? After you train with every operator or before?
Well, I think it's part of the, at least in our use case, that was part of the validation results. So since this is more like a research project, one of the things we thought at the very beginning was are we able to make an assistant that can do a lot of things? One of them is improving ADCOS performance by X%. We realized we can't. We are not able to do that, as I said before, because everyone is different. So yes, for some people it could actually be helpful and help them improve their performance, but for some others it could be too much or not enough. So in terms of certification, I'm not that worried about that, because part of the validation, part of the project was to research and get to that conclusion. On the other hand, we found out that some of the things we designed from the very beginning as warnings actually were very, very good, valued by ADCOS as additional safety nets. So if we were to certificate the solution in a future, that would be probably another conversation, but we would need to involve different profiles from the very beginning to understand how different they are, if that's answering your question.
Just to add to this conversation, because I had exactly the same question. I don't understand actually how you can, with a given ODD, suddenly change the person who's going to use it with different criteria. So does that mean that during your ODD step, you would make sure that you represent each of the controller behavior, and then you kind of say, my model is adapted to this kind of shape in terms of activity of the controller? And maybe that could work, but I haven't seen that in the concept paper of EASA, and haven't seen anything like this. So it's a completely open question, I think, unless EASA comes with an answer. It's not written in the document.
Sorry, Sylvia, I'm just trying to flick through the document quickly as you were speaking. Within the W model for the development of AI systems, there is a process in there called validation. So if you are doing the validation in accordance with the model and in accordance with the paper, then it will be a natural part of your system development. Sylvia's poised, I'm going to keep talking till we're out of time. So largely within the scope of your development and your system development, there should be a process. And like I say, if you're following the concept development, then that's where you'll hit it. It's a shame Francois is not here because this is absolutely his subject. So if you contact Francois Triboulet, who's I think is in the other section, then he will give you a very detailed answer on that one. Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's like corner cases, I would say. You just have to look at what your intention is about your application. But I'd like to see it work with different controllers and how you adapt it and certify it. And Francois, yeah, please.
Any other questions? Yes, please. I don't know who was first. The gentleman. Okay.
Thanks for the presentation. I have a question for the second intervention. Two different questions, actually. The first one is, could you tell us more about what if the assistant is not working or unavailable? Is there any training? Because that's a question that comes back quite often. We use AI, we use automation to make things more efficient. But what about losing skills with using those systems? Second one, having a NetCo background as well. For example, as a tower controller, you know that some companies can accept quick taxi, can accept immediate departures, can accept intersection, quick approach, whereas some other cannot or don't want to. So can you integrate that in a system? And my question is, isn't there some kind of discrimination between companies, meaning that you know that that company could be favored by the system? Is it even allowed? Or because that's what we're doing as ATCOs. When we work, we know that that guy, they can expedite and so on. So that was my two questions.
Thank you very much. Regarding the first question, you have to think of ESA as, in a simple way, as Waze or Google Maps. It's going to show you the route. You can either take it or not. It's going to show you the route and explain you why it's showing you that route. If you don't follow it, it's great, because ESA will recalculate the sequence according to what you have done. So if it's saying number 1 is a departure and you say, no, I'm going to just land the number 2 first, clear to land, ESA will recalculate. So at the end, ESA is, according to EASA, is level 2A, because it's going to be always working for you, but you have the final decision always. So it's up to you. Regarding D skills, which is like the eternal question as air traffic controllers, I don't have the answer. The thing is, we've noticed that ESA is helpful when there's a lot of traffic. When there is not, it doesn't really make that much sense. So maybe in a future scenario where ESA is working on a tower, you can either switch it off for a certain period of time so people get used to working alone and then use it when you really start getting a little bit more stressed. That could be a solution. Regarding different airports, different ANSPs and so on, ESA has been designed to work in Alicante, but I guess if in the future it can be exported somehow, it really needs to be tailored to the airport where it's going to be implemented. There's so many restrictions, so many local rules. Actually, ESA is not contemplating all the local rules that apply to Alicante because there's so many and there was not enough time. But at the end, it has to be a tool that adapts to the environment and not the other way around.
I think we have time for one more question, and after that we need to close the breakout session. I saw you first raising the hand and then move on.
Thank you. So on my side, I will have a cross question for both the use cases presented, and I will join also the point raised by here regarding the ODD specification when you change the operator, for example, when evaluating the system. So I was on the tech leading of the MD project, so I really know the requirements for the data and to go into the AI validation. So my question is straightforward regarding the intention detection, for example, of for the operator. You mentioned on the latest presentation the detection, for example, of the intention for the pathfinder or runway finding on an airport. So how this intention is detected. So maybe the features that you are using are independent from the air traffic controller. So the features of the AI system does not rely on the person X or Y. That's why maybe when you change the air traffic controller, this doesn't make any problem. Does it case?
Yeah, I mean, in my use case, the answer is simple. It's basically that. Right now, it's not tailored to anyone. It's just focused on not breaking the rules of the air, basically. So ESA will never suggest you to take off, to clear for takeoff 2 consecutive aircraft with different wake turbulences or things like that. So right now, it's independent from the person. In my use case. Now, Jaime.
Yes, the definition of the operational intention is declarative for the pilot. He say, I want that. We have a user interface. I want A, B, and C in order of priority. But today, during the project, we have limited this human-machine collaboration to the cockpit. I agree with you. We need to get clearance with the ATC. We understood that our system should be enlarged to a negotiation with the ATC and Air Operational Control Center, and to accept the operational intention of the pilot, because maybe the traffic is not adapted for the operational intention, like profitability, for example, and we need to negotiate that to a second level. But today we work in isolated way for the cockpit operations.
We need to close the session right now. Thank you very much for all the presents and the questions, and I encourage you to approach us during the break and ask questions if you have any remained. Thank you very much.
So we have 3 distinguished speakers in this session, which is quite intriguing as a title, Assessing Human Competencies with Artificial Intelligence. So we have under the 50 minutes now, I guess. So we'll have 3 presentations from Marco, Frederic, and Teresa, and then we have Q&A. And as I said, at 1600 we'll reconvene in Europa for the closure of the event. So I'll start with Marco. He's a data scientist in INAV. at INAV Innovation Lab with experience in statistical data analysis in developing AI models across various industries, including experience in computer vision, time series analysis, LLMs, application, etc. He has a PhD in physics, and I'll finish, I think since kindergarten he was in physics, master in physics, bachelor in physics. Despite the love of physics, attraction was higher on air traffic management. So, Marco, you are first to take the floor. Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, so thank you, Tony, for your introduction. And as Tony said, I'm a data scientist at INAV Innovation Lab. I have experience in data science, statistical data analysis, and in general in developing solutions based on artificial intelligence. Today, I'm here to talk about Alphabot, that stands for Autopilot Speech-to-Text Assistant. That is one of the projects we are developing. How can I change this? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, this is a tool that enters in the context of the training of air traffic controllers, especially in the early stages of their training. It offers an immersive environment for practicing at-copilot communications. Indeed, it is able to simulate different pilots that interact with the human ATC that is doing his training. This is a generative AI enhanced tool designed to accelerate and improve the phonetic and the communicative skills of the at-copilot interaction. Since we are dealing with large language model applications for the interaction of the human air traffic controller and the simulated pilot, we have a more flexible interaction resulting respect to a rule-based engine, resulting in a more natural interaction. In these slides are briefly summarized the main modules of this tool. So first of all, we have a speech-to-text module that takes in input the vocal instruction of the ATC. It is essentially an advanced speech-to-text algorithm that is fine-tuned with a dedicated internal INAV at-copilot conversation dataset integrated with a public dataset, resulting in more than 3 hours of conversation for the training of this module. Then the output of this module is processed by a large language model module. So we define a dedicated prompt with clear and precise instructions and providing several examples of at-copilot interactions. So we define well the role of the large language model and the constraints to be respected. All of these in order to generate an appropriate and contextually accurate pilot response, so simulating the real-life at-copilot communications. Finally, the output of this module is processed by 2 separate modules. So we have a text-to-speech module in order to return a response into a natural sound speech, simulating also radio effect to have a more realistic interaction. And we have also an instruction recognition module that detects and translates the large language model output into the instruction for the FDP. Okay, now in the next slide, I'll show you a brief demonstration of this tool. Hope that we were able to see and also the audio is present. So hope all we will find. What we will see is a person that acting the role of a new joiner in ATM World that will interact with the Alphabot tool. So we will see that Alphabot will simulate pilots that will contact the ATC, and the ATC will give some basic instruction like climb, descend, turn, and so on. So,
Sylvie, you need to
okay.
Yes.
Sorry for the Italian.
Buongiorno, Roma contact. Here Ryanair 440, step
Essentially, here is a pilot that simulated that is contacting the ATC.
4467, descent to flight level 250.
Here we have the vocal instruction that with the text-to-speech module is converted into text that is ingested in the large language model module.
Ryanair 4467.
Okay, the volume is a bit lower, but now we just have the response of the large language model, so we can have an interaction between the pilot and the ATC.
Ryanair 4467, turn left 50 degrees.
Launch Juno, Roma contact. Airspeed Bird 369. Turning left 50 degrees, Ryanair 4467.
Ryanair 4467, climb to flight level 300.
We have also a pop-up that is updated real time with the provided instructions.
Flight level 30.
And okay, that is just a small demonstration, and that's all from my side. Thank you.
Marco, many thanks for this first introductory setup and setting up the scene on what we are going to take as a Q&A later. I suggest we take all the presenters and then we fire the questions on them. The next one in line, we save the ladies at the end. So Fred, you are next. Frederick de Kock, it's a colleague from simulator team at Maastricht, Upper Area Control Center, since 2007. He focuses primarily on innovation and development of tools aimed at enhancing the quality of training. He's passionate about aviation. And Fred brings a specific spatial academic backgrounds to his work. He studied surveying and topography, and he had also a PhD in law. But despite that, like Mark was in love with the physics, in love with law, but he's back in ATM. So he will show how the things are, experimental, because all this work that we will see today in all the three presentations are experimental, of course, but it's a huge breakthrough, and then see how we can profit of this in the future. Right?
Thank you for this introduction. I also realized that I should have coordinated my presentation with the previous speaker, because we are also working on something which is actually similar, which is our ASR project, automatic speech recognition. But I'm also going to talk to you about eye tracking a bit. Regarding the automatic speech recognition, there is actually a very specific reason why in Maastricht UAC we introduced this. And that is because we have put a lot of effort in developing self-learning for our student ATCOs. Meaning that from home or from within a classroom, whenever they have the spare time for it, they can launch a simulator exercise which is relevant for their stage of training, and self-train. Of course, we have noticed that this easily becomes like a clicking game, because what they were actually doing is making inputs on the label of the flight track, and then the simulation exercise, the simulator just executes the command which was given via the label. Of course, this brings down realism quite a lot, because your capacity as ATCO or as student ATCO is quite high if the track does immediately what you have put into the label. Meaning it's also not very realistic. So one of the things we have been working on is to introduce automatic speech recognition. Why? Because, well, first of all, it adds realism. So the student ATCO really needs to talk to the system. Also, it brings down a lot the pace, because the student also has to wait for the readback of the machine. Also, that means that student ATCO has to start prioritizing the tasks. What we have also noticed as a nice side effect of automatic speech recognition is that at this stage of technology, I would say it still makes, I'm not going to say a lot of mistakes, but it still makes mistakes, which is actually a good side effect, because it also means that the student has to really listen carefully for the readback, meaning that if a flight level which was issued is read back wrong, the student has to pick it up and correct this. So this is one of the things that we're working on. Another thing which is, I would say, rather premature for the moment, but that we are also putting quite some effort in our training environment in Maastricht, is to work on eye tracking, and mainly to get insights into scanning patterns, like how fast is the student scanning the screen, how is a student, or how many times or in what situations is a student fixating on certain parts of the radar screen. And another interesting kind of data that we can retrieve nowadays, and the technology has also become quite cheap to roll this out, is actually measuring pupil dilation. And there have been various studies in the past that pupil dilation could be, we are still in a process of validating, could be giving an insight on cognitive workload or stress. We are still in a phase that we have to explore, experiment, and validate. So I'm very well aware that we have to put a big disclaimer on how useful this data will be, but it looks promising. And at least we are now in a stage of technology that we at least can retrieve or gain this data in a rather cheap way. Yeah, this is an overview of where this is put in place in our training cycle, I would say. So we want to give them more exposure. So we want to give students more access to self-learning, where we are going to implement, well, we have already implemented ASR and in the future also eye tracking, meaning that we can also use the data that we have collected for debriefing reasons and to actually tailor-make or improve individual training for the student. Regarding the setup of our ASR, I will be quite short because I think it overlaps a bit with what the previous speaker was saying. I would dare to say that we're using actually pretty much the same technology. We're using a transcription engine. We have actually fine-tuned the Whisper model in our environment, specifically for ATC, so that the Whisper model could pick up, I would dare to say 90% plus of the ATC clearances and transcribe it in a correct way. And then this is where I would say AI really was a game changer for us, is that we could send it to a GPT model, also with, I would say, putting quite some effort in prompting, giving also context about the simulator exercise which is running, so a flight, the route, what levels to expect. And then the GPT model gives us an output that we can, in most of the times, that is useful to send to our sim kernel. Sim kernel is actually our tool to steer the tracks on the radar display. There are new models coming out. I'm not going to say every day, that's a bit exaggerated, but often, I would say every month there are updates. We are now seeing that, for example, the GPT-4 model is also now equipped with a transcription module, where you can also already send context the moment you ask a WAV file or a sound file to be transcribed. And this is, again, increasing accuracy quite a lot. So this is something that we are now experimenting with. So I think that this is something which will, as I see that many ANSPs are working on this, that this is something that is really going to be something that we will see a lot in training environments in the near future. I would say almost all ANSPs will probably be working on something like this. Yeah. Biggest issue that we're facing still is latency. We have put ourselves the objective to bring the time that it takes from a clearance which is issued to the execution of it on the simulator platform under, I would say, 1500, 1600 milliseconds, which is acceptable, but in all honesty is still a bit slow. Yeah? In real life, if you give an urgent clearance to an aircraft, the pilot will normally respond much faster. Yeah. What do we have to do here? I would say, wait until the machines are maybe fast enough to bring this latency down. Yeah. We also realize that there's always going to be a minimum level of latency that we will probably never be able to get under. Yeah. Also something about eye tracking, which is quite interesting. We are actually mainly trying to capture gaze data. How does it actually work? We have I would say, a good experience with, and I'm not here to make any publication for or marketing for these companies, but there are two major players, I would say. That's Tobii and Intel RealSense, and we have tried both of them, which provide very, I would say, very accurate data actually on gaze data. So it's a little device which is at the bottom of a screen, bottom of a radar screen. Okay, you have to calibrate it first time that you use it. But then we see really accurate data up to, I would say, 20 to 50 pixels or something, which is really accurate. And this is quite interesting because it can give us quite some interesting insights into scanning techniques. For example, in a debriefing, show a heat map. Also, how shall I say, if there is an entry conflict, for example, in a sector, in the past, yeah, we would have to ask as an instructor to a trainee, did you spot that entry conflict, and believe what the student would say. Nowadays, we do have in debriefing the data, well, there was clearly an entry conflict, but you did not look at it. Does it mean that if we have the data that the student did look at it, that the student processed that? No, still not, but at least we can now prove that, for example, a trainee did not spot an entry conflict. Regarding the pupil dilation, as I said, it is really in a premature exploration phase, but however, we did do some trials already. And if you send this data to an AI engine, because we measure at 60 Hertz, so that's 60 data lines per second, AI is promising to find patterns into pupil dilation, and maybe we will be able to derive conclusions out of this, yeah? To see at what moments in an exercise the student was suffering from a high cognitive workload or stress. We do not know yet, but it looks promising. I'm going to keep it very short, so this was actually my presentation. If you have any questions, then I will be happy to answer during the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Fred. Now it's the turn of Teresa Reis. She's also in Maastricht, Upper Area Control Center in the training department. Well, Fred, you mentioned patterns, and I see here a pattern. They are all PhDs also. Teresa holds a PhD in aerospace engineering from University of Bristol in UK, previously educated in aerospace engineering in Portugal. Your research look at structural sizing and weight variation statistical analysis, but again, coming back, you used to work in Portugal, in NATS UK, and then now in EUROCONTROL, where you contribute to development of next generation. Is anyone from EASA, by the way, in the room? Well, you cannot count, you are a secondary to EASA. To competence-based training and assessment tools. So competence-based training is a buzzword these days, but let's see how we look at that. Yeah. Teresa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you. I had a first slide to introduce myself, but thank you, Tony, for the great introduction. I guess it won't be needed. Just quick mention, I work with Fred in training in MUAC. I'm a data scientist for training. So yeah, MUAC is our operational center for those who don't know, and we also provide training for new students to become air traffic controllers. So just a little overview of how we handle training right now, what's our current approach and what's our future vision. So currently, the way we train our students is by a structured course. So they will have classrooms, they have exercises in the sim, and they have self-learning like Fred was mentioning. This is a structured course. It is it's structured and organized by the training instructors before a course comes in, and they all follow the same course. There's periodic check-ins, so at certain points in the training, they will check in with the students and see if they're apt to continue or not. And if needed, one specific student can get extra simulator training. More specifically, in the simulator itself, we always have a NATCO coach next to the student, and this coach is observing the exercise and is, supporting the student, but observing how well they're doing. And at the end, they'll have a little verbal debriefing in person, and the coach will go on to write a report about how the student did in the exercise. This report is a CBTA report, so it's competence-based. So they will be rated on competences, and they will also be given comments on these competences. So how well they did in situational awareness or scanning, for example, that was mentioned by Fred with eye tracking. And yeah, then the student can go on and look at their reports and how they're doing. Future vision. We envision a future where this course is not so structured. We see that our trainees are very different and they need different learning methods. Some of them can learn quite fast in the beginning and can approach more complex scenarios quite quickly, and some of them need more time. So we want a more individual learning path. But of course, we have this bottleneck of having to plan simulators, sim pilots and sim assistants, and to have to design the exercises for the students beforehand. So we have this bottleneck for the individual learning path. We also want the students to have immediate objective feedback. So Fred mentioned self-learning. In the self-learning, the students can do an exercise, but actually they don't get any feedback from the exercise unless there's a coach next to them as well. So we have the data. We have data coming from the simulator. We have the data coming from the remote sim. So we can give them immediate objective feedback. And then we want these exercises to be created based on needs. So depending on the needs of the student, depending on their learning patterns, depending on how quick they're going, depending on the recurring patterns that they make, recurring mistakes, we can create exercises for each student individually. And then maybe, who knows, we can have this real-time adaptation. So in the sim, if we have in real time a scoring mechanism behind that can detect a situation where students constantly miss a sector or a specific area in their control sector, maybe we can prompt or trigger that area more or make it easier for them. So, same slide as before. Put in other words, our vision is to kind of close the loop so we can do individual training. So if we first expose the students to the sim and to sim exercises, then we go on to debriefing, and then they can go on to individual training. But in this debriefing and this individual training, at the moment they get feedback, but actually the loop just starts over. Nothing is done necessarily with this debriefing. Of course, they have a notion of how well they're doing, but they still go on doing the same structured course as it was before. But we want to use this debriefing to inform the exercise creation module and to inform the self-learning module, to then expose them to situations that are tailored to them. We have a lot of things that we are working to make this vision a reality, but the two that I'm going to be talking about is the replay and the scoring and CBAS. So CBAS is our competence-based training and assessment, CBTA. It is essentially a database with a reporting tooling on top. So this is what I was mentioning. The coach can go into CBAS and write a report on how well the student did, can rate the competence, can write comments. It's very free text. There's a lot of comments, a lot of general overviews of how well the exercise went. And then as a student, you can go into your area and you can consult report by report. The first thing that we started doing is implementing Gen AI into CBAS. So with Gen AI, you can have a summary of how well you did in the last week, and we can also combine that with just traditional data analysis and see how they're progressing on certain competences and see where there's red flags. So just from a very simple database, we can extract this free text and we can implement, put Gen AI on top of it. It can also help the coaches write reports a lot more efficiently. It can standardize the quality of reports because it can be quite biased depending on which coach we get in the sim that day. So yes. We also did something that was, we took all our historical data, so all of the competence ratings that we had from 14 years of students, and we tried to predict where they are. So this green band that you see our successful students band. These are 2 students, one that's doing quite well and one that unfortunately failed. And we can predict when they start dipping below where they should be. And this is maybe a little bit controversial. It is just informational. It is not for the students to see. It's just for the coaches to have an idea if their perception is correct in terminating the training or not, or in pushing in certain areas or not. The other thing I wanted to talk about is scoring. So scoring, we can say that it's sort of like a gamifying of the simulator exercise. So like I said, like we have the coach that's next to the student, but why not take the data that comes from the simulator and have automatic coach? So we have radar data, we have FTP data, the controller inputs, the HMI inputs, so how the student is hovering on the screen, where they're clicking, things like that. We have the data coming from the ASR and the eye tracking. How about we pull all this together, and can we not inform the CBTAs and the competences that we are measuring automatically, or at least some of them? So with this data, what we've started doing is we started measuring separation infringements, flight efficiency, so how direct and straight a flight is, if a flight ever penetrates military areas, how well it adheres to letters of agreement, so sector handover, the efficient use of clearances, safe clearances, but also if, for example, there's a heading clearance, but then 5 minutes later another heading clearance needs to be given to the same aircraft, it means that the first one wasn't enough. We have a measure of complexity, occupancy, so we're building a bunch of metrics from this data that is going to be combined into, in the future, a scoring mechanism. This is where we are right now. We have built all these metrics that are being validated, and there's prototypes for all of this, for the Gen AI things as well. Our vision is that in the future we take also the modules, so the speech recognition, and we can also inform, so one of our competencies, phraseology and communication, so we can also maybe rate automatically how well they did in communication or phraseology. Stress levels, things that are more subjective, maybe we can use the eye tracking. And we can use all of this data to inform us very well in how well a student is performing. And this is my presentation. Thank you.